This is the Critical Conversations podcast, a KPOV special project developed to feature unique perspectives and the courage it takes to go there, challenge mundane thought, and question the norm.
Today's show will feature Mary Meyer, a lifetime volunteer and a real super life hero, one I am proud to call a sister. Mary Meyer, are you there, Mary?
Aloha, kakahiaka, and thank you for having me today.
What a great opening by you. You are I would call you almost a multicultural person.
Well, that's true, Steve.
I know. Will you share with us some of the unselfish acts that keep you going and why today?
Actually, it's my whole life story is what can I do to make our world better? And I'd like to start out with just making a little quote here or a paraphrase from Thomas Paine, who said, "The world is my country, all humankind my brethren, and to do good is my religion." And I just think that it makes my life so much more pleasant, and probably anyone else I come in contact to, that we can be of service and be helpful and be joyfully share all of our gifts, which we all have many of, even if we think we don't, we do.
I know you personally. I've worked shoulder to shoulder with you on a number of occasions, and I think that it's safe to say that most of the volunteers that we have associated with feel just like you do.
Oh, I'm absolutely sure they do. I mean, it's just an honor to be able to do something. I mean, people have limitations physically, which I have myself, but I still feel that I have a lot of gifts and opportunities to share them. As again, back to we all have opportunities to share our gifts, and we might think, oh, they're not that much, but if I just like to use this example, if everyone I knew sent me $5, I would have enough to pay the rent. And I think that sometimes people think, well, they can't do enough. Everything is enough. Anything is enough. It makes a huge difference. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more fully. I think, one of the key words in volunteerism is connection. And most volunteers are more than willing to connect, and in particular when it comes to the homeless population.
Oh, yeah. I definitely feel that, for myself, having an experience with that, I think that even when I was homeless, I could still go work at the food bank. I wasn't living in Oregon then, and I haven't lived in Oregon all that long, but I had, from my past experience, I could still work at the food bank as, a pauper and serve other people.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And I know just a little bit about your history, and I know that you spent a certain amount of time in Hawaii, and I did too. And I think the native Hawaiian culture is very helpful, very caring, very outgoing. Was that your experience?
Well, I lived there for decades, and there's such a difference between being a tourist in Hawaii and being a resident of Hawaii for decades. Basically, all humankind has a generous heart. I think that it doesn't matter where you live, that you will find that. It's a much more lackadaisical culture there, so, you don't have to wear snow boots or shovel the neighbor's sidewalk, where here we have those opportunities to shovel the neighbor's sidewalk or throw in the newspaper to the door or take the garbage can in or cook something for somebody. So my experiences in Hawaii, well, there's tons of things to volunteer for, absolutely. And as a lifetime union member, I always took opportunities to volunteer for all campaigns, and I'm not even picking a side here, just any campaign that was out there. It was a wonderful experience to wave signs and wear T-shirts and be out campaigning for people who were running for office, because it is brave to run for office. That's another experience I've had. And to put your name out there on the ballot and run for office, it's not for cowards. It's some experience I wish everyone would encounter in their life and take advantage of.
No question about it. I think that, and I've talked to several other people who have become politicians, and I like the term statesman. I think that people that get into politics and have a number of good reasons for getting into it also realize that there comes a time when they've done what they can, and it's time to let somebody else pick up where they left off. And unfortunately, I think the same is true of volunteerism. I think, as we've spoken in the past, it is difficult to have enough volunteers for almost anything that you're asking for volunteers for. Has that been your experience?
It has, to an extent, but I will tell you this. I worked in a crisis center, and that was the volunteer recruitment was continuous there. One of my volunteer jobs now is working at Brightside, and I'm in the bottle and can room, which is adjacent to the store in the big barn out there. And that we have a difficult time keeping volunteers there. The store also needs volunteers all the time, but then if you go out to the shelter out on Hemlock by 17th there, they pretty much have an ongoing and very, very active volunteer base. So I think that where you burn out is when you have few volunteers and you expect them to do more than they are willing to do or capable of doing. So to keep your recruitment, I mean, that's an ongoing activity to keep a recruitment, and that's where I think you do need a paid person to make sure your recruitment or your volunteers or your income base to support your projects is ongoing.
Yeah, it's not unlike this station. It's the same thing. I think that our number of volunteers is well over 100, and there's only been, at least in my recollection, only 2.5 paid people here at KPOV. So, I think we all here at KPOV have a real significant feel for people who volunteer. I also would like you to talk about the idea. You don't get thrown into this cold. Usually there's some level of orientation.
Oh, yeah, it's not baptism by fire usually. But I also volunteer at Oregon State University with the Extension Office, and they have a pretty intense training there. And I've been with them since about 2013 or 14, and that's for the Nutrition Education Program, where they're constant, ongoing. We've had a pretty much not much activity for the past during the COVID period, but otherwise we were meeting every month. We were in the food banks. It was constant, and you are always getting new knowledge and new information to pass on. So, no, we just didn't go in there cold. Now, over at Bottles and Cans, that's a little more... that's not a really organized training, but it's not too hard to figure out what's worth 10 cents. And it's a dirty, filthy job, and it's labor intensive, so maybe that's why people just aren't appealing, or it's not appealing to folks. But I've been there for about 5 years.
Yeah. Well,
it's convenient for me, though. That's another thing. It's convenient to volunteer for me over there, especially.
Yeah. Well, and I think, once again, I think it gives you an outlet and a chance to talk to a lot of different people. And I think that this is really important, especially as we become more mature in life. We like to share our past experiences and the things that have shaped who we are.
Oh, not only that, but if everyone has a story, and to listen to everyone's story, it doesn't matter who it is. It's like, well, that is an interesting story. I love to hear people's stories, and going out into the public with people that I might not ever even associate with in my life, I get to hear their story, and I really appreciate that. Yeah,
I think it's sad that it seems like in a lot of cases in the regular workaday world, we really don't get to know a lot about a lot of people unless we work with them on an ongoing basis. And I do think that volunteers open up much quicker than the average person.
Oh, I agree, because we share. First of all, we just share our generosity, for one thing, and there's no price on generosity. I think your introduction kind of addressed that somewhat. There's no price for it. So, and time, time and talent and our treasures, those are our gifts that we can put out and share. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a huge amount of time or talent or money. It's just the fact that doing anything makes a difference.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more fully. Mary, would you mind giving us a little bit of your historical background and possibly what led you to feel this way?
Well, I came from a large family, and my parents were very generous. And one thing that we had plenty of was food. And it was because we had a huge garden, and we had chickens, and we had goats, and we had fresh food. And my parents were very generous with that, and that's pretty much what we had to give was food. And you can go anywhere in the world, and I know you won't disagree with this, Steve. Everyone eats, and we all have music. And my father played the harmonica, and my mother sang, I thought, well, but her kindergarten report card said she couldn't carry a tune. But they were generous with the gifts that they had, even though they were probably limited. Well, they were limited, Well, we had a big family, so there was, who knew was going to be at the table. There was just always room for more. And I was in 4-H when I was young, and I just always felt that it was it's in my DNA. It's just from my parents' generosity and from growing up in a rural area where you did a lot more bartering than you did for purchasing. People shared their crops. 4-H was just a huge outlet for me because that was like really structured, and you had the opportunity to sew. That's what I did. I sewed. My mother canned a lot of food, and 4-H does that also.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, I think you're going to have a big impact at OHSU. That's really going to be important going forward. I know that we're going to start carrying programs from OHSU about 4-H and a lot of other things that I hope that people will get involved with, and especially after they've heard your story, and I hope a lot of people get a chance to hear your story. Where did a lot of this take place? What state?
Well, it was in Michigan, and then I was in Hawaii for decades, and now I'm here. And one thing that I've done, well, I can't do it anymore because of health reasons, but donating blood, and you can do that pretty much anywhere. And at 17, I think with your parents' signature, but 18 for sure, you can donate blood. And to me, of all the things I've done in my life, that was the most heroic because not everyone can do that, first of all. And when you do donate blood, you learn a lot about yourself, especially if there's something that your doctors would never look for, or you find out you have small red blood cells, or you find out what type of blood you have. It's just a ton of information for you also. And it's just a really wonderful thing to just donate blood. You can give a pint every 6-8 weeks.
Yeah, and I think it does a lot to reinforce trust within our medical system. I think a lot of the people that the times that I've donated blood, I see a lot of the same faces year after year.
Oh, you do? I think that I saw matchups at the blood bank, and I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah. Well, you have a few minutes to think about things, that's for sure, and you get an opportunity to talk to the technician that's taking your blood, and I think that all helps out with the whole experience. So,
yeah, you're sitting there saying, oh, what type are you? And then you're, pretty soon they're dating, I swear.
Yeah, well, I think there's worse places to meet people, that's for sure.
That is so true. And if you know anybody who's ever needed blood, you know how hard it is or what you have to do to get them to have blood donated or pay for it, which is not free.
Yeah. Well, and, I think part of my experience about living in Hawaii is my wife's son and his wife lived there, and they got under, financial hardship, and she had to donate blood. And it's been an important lesson for all of us.
Oh, yeah, people need blood. It's not something they can manufacture, and I don't suspect I'm sure they're working on it, but I really don't suspect it will ever be a very great substitute for human blood.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of round out this conversation, do you see any drawbacks in becoming a volunteer?
Oh, absolutely not. Not for me anyway. I'm retired also, so I have a lot of time, but I do have a busy life. It's not like I just volunteer and do nothing else. So I think the opportunity is that you have a schedule that you can set for yourself. And bottles and cans is very flexible. The other places, with the cold weather shelter here that Shepherd's House runs in Redmond, that is according to a schedule. You can't go in there 24 hours. And OSU has a schedule. But the opportunities in a lot of places are very flexible. So it's not a very strict rule, and you can volunteer when you want to most of the time. So there's no drawbacks for me, I would say that.
Yeah. Well, and I also, because when I met you, it gave us a chance to kind of compare our political viewpoints. And I told you at the outset we wouldn't talk too much about politics, but I do think that what we do and the politics we choose have a lot to do with who we eventually become.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right about that, Steve. And something else, too, and we're not going to talk about politics, but, this country doesn't run well just because somebody wants to be your boss. We really need to have input into how our society functions. And it's very important that if you do nothing else and you don't want to volunteer anywhere, you could still email your local legislatures, the Congress. You can email anyone now. It's very convenient to do that, and you can write them a letter, and you can call them. They all have 800 numbers, and express that you have these concerns or you want some help, or, maybe, hey, you're doing a good job. I appreciate that. So I think it's very important to at least do that, and in some ways it is volunteering, that you have your opinion and it's known, or, based on some facts, hopefully, of what makes the society function for everyone. Yeah.
Well, and ultimately, I think as a volunteer, you get to see all this stuff happen right at where it's occurring.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, there was an article. I do get the newspaper, which I know a lot of people do not, but I do get the newspaper, and there was in Redmond, Counselor Fitch had wrote an article. Well, he wrote a letter to the editor, and it was about input from the local people here in the plans for this city, because the council itself is not really open to having the public make comments on this, and he put in the paper that in his editorial page on the little letters to write to him, and he'll make sure the council gets that. So he's out here advocating for us, and I would hope that all our representatives would be advocating for the good of all humankind and not just a select few.
Yeah. Well, and I think as things have become a little bit more difficult to deal with, I'm hopeful that a lot of people will tune in and watch city council meetings, both in Bend and Redmond, because it's one way we actually get to see what's going on.
Absolutely, and it's so easy, too. And even for myself, who is not a very technical person, I mean, we're on the phone speaking as this is conversation, and I don't own a television, but I do have the internet, and anyone can watch the council meetings. It's very entertaining sometimes, and it's always educational.
Yeah, I have to say, and I'll admit to my negligence, I really didn't get that involved, and I'm afraid that a lot of people don't get that involved because it doesn't seem to be within their wheelhouse. As long as everything's going okay in our neighborhood, we're fine with it. But overall, it's very important to look at those things.
Oh yeah, it's like your own household or your own relationships. When everything is going well, you think, okay, you're not going to put too much effort into it. But the minute you stop putting effort into it, it's not going to go well. So it's a continuous maintenance that has to be pursued to keep things functioning smoothly.
Mary, I want to thank you for your time on this interview. I hope that everybody got a chance to hear you, because I think what you had to say was really important.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Steve, and I really am grateful that you thought of interviewing me. I feel grateful.
Excellent. Okay, well, thanks again, Mary. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, see you soon, Steve. Aloha.
You've been listening to a KPOV Critical Conversation. To hear more engaging interviews on important topics, please visit kpov.org/criticalconversations.